In the misty dawn of the 9th century, longships, like ghostly figures, glided across European coasts. Their crews weren't solely pursuing riches like silver and silk. They sought something more substantial: dominion and respect. With every raid, the Norsemen's aspirations grew, extending beyond the visible horizon. England reeled under Norse authority, its destiny divided between the Saxons and Vikings. Dublin flourished as a vibrant center for the slave trade, and Normandy's origins became France's future. Under the warm Mediterranean sun, Norse rulers' crowns gleamed amidst a diversity of languages and cultures. However, their dominance waned like dissipating smoke, leaving behind echoes of axe-shaped inheritances and tales of kings who rose and fell with the changing fortunes. Embark on the windswept longships of the Norsemen, navigating the mist-shrouded seas of early Europe with a singular aim: to inscribe their sagas with narratives of wealth and conquest. The initial appearance of these formidable Vikings instilled terror in the hearts of medieval Europeans, who perceived them as nothing more than predatory pirates driven by a hunger for gold and human captives. Yet this raw aggression was merely a precursor to a more significant transformation that would follow. Our exploration delves into how these fierce warriors transitioned from relentless pillagers to established rulers, fundamentally altering the medieval landscape of Europe. In their formative period, Viking raids were uncoordinated yet highly effective attacks targeting monasteries and settlements scattered along the coastlines. Commencing around 793 AD, the infamous attack on Lindisfarne signaled the onset of these swift assaults, the air filled with the sound of burning roofs and the lamentations of the vanquished. However, amidst the fear, a sense of curiosity emerged, laying the groundwork for a broader vision. The currents of destiny guided these seafarers toward a future beyond immediate plunder, a future where land and authority beckoned from the vulnerable frontiers of Europe. As these swift raiders gradually transitioned into settlers, their ambitions matured. Longships evolved beyond being mere vessels of war. They also transported families and essential seed grain. Shores that once viewed them as harbingers of destruction would witness Vikings disembarking with newfound aspirations of establishing a permanent presence. A significant transformation unfolded as they exchanged their axes for plows, motivated by leaders who recognized that stability and land represented the ultimate wealth. This shift ignited resistance, as cautious indigenous populations reacted with suspicion, their lands now inhabited by invaders turned neighbors. Undeterred, the Vikings employed both military skill and diplomatic shrewdness, securing footholds amidst the resistant local inhabitants. Through treaties and marriages, new alliances were formed, and gradually these newcomers became landowners and rulers, a profound change affecting both society and individuals. Beyond the pursuit of gold, the Viking expansion was fueled by deeper motivations rooted in both their cultural myths and practical necessities. The Viking sagas celebrated heroic deeds and reflected ambitions that went beyond mere plundering. A scarcity of fertile land and growing populations in their homelands, exacerbated by harsh winters, made Europe's productive fields and extensive trade networks an irresistible target for colonization. Expansion was almost inevitable as their ancient tales and logistical needs intertwined, compelling them to establish settlements across an ever-expanding territory. However, establishing control over newly acquired lands demanded more than just conquest. It necessitated the consolidation of power through levels of governance previously unknown in Viking society. The traditional Norse leadership structure, where authority was gathered through assemblies and shared power, gave way to kingship. Leaders who once moved freely now wore crowns, creating complex systems of authority that blended Norse customs with local traditions. Fortifications were erected, coins were minted, and laws were enacted, bringing order to societies and regions previously under chaotic rule. These rulers combined Norse and native elements, forging new identities that spanned geographical and cultural boundaries. The Norse were not content with merely ruling. They were skilled at cultural integration. Wherever they settled, their rich cultural heritage of myth, governance, and art intertwined with local traditions. Over time, Viking sagas and indigenous legends merge. Norse legal principles combined with local laws to govern the newly formed communities. Even in matters of faith, the Viking world adapted, Churches were built alongside temples dedicated to Norse gods, reflecting not just political expediency, but a profound cultural synthesis. In regions like England's Danelaw, their cultural influence shaped diverse societies characterized by resilience and innovation. As Viking lineages intermarried with native aristocracies, a new composite identity emerged. Generations bearing Norse names while adopting European customs created something distinctly new. Nevertheless, maintaining authority in foreign lands tested their resolve. Rulers were compelled to balance power with appeasing restive populations, utilizing not only military strength, but also negotiation, marital alliances, and treaties. Their continued dominance relied on establishing legitimacy, reinforced by both shrewd diplomacy and the defensive capabilities of castle walls. Even as they reached the peak of their influence, forces of change signaled their decline. The very qualities that had elevated them to rulers began to diminish as settled life drew their descendants away from seafaring pursuits. The spread of Christianity softened the warrior ethos. Political fragmentation exposed weaknesses, leading to a gradual erosion of power. As feudal lords competed for control, the Viking realms became absorbed into larger European kingdoms, slowly relinquishing their origin myths and assimilating into the broader European identity. Thus concludes our narrative of the Vikings, their journey from fierce raiders to rulers, and their eventual return to the annals of history. Their story transcends mere conquest. It is a testament to transformation and enduring influence. Though their kingdoms crumbled, their myths continue to resonate through time, reminding us that even the most formidable forces can evolve into lasting legends, stories etched in both fire and royal decree. In the late 9th century, England was a land embroiled in turmoil, its destiny entwined between the weakening authority of Anglo-Saxon monarchs and the aggressive incursions of Viking invaders. As the Norsemen advanced further into England, they established territories that would become known as the Danelaw, a region where Norse customs, legal systems, and rulers held sway. This was more than just the seizure of land. It was a cultural frontier where the distinctions between conqueror and conquered became blurred. The Danelaw spanned from the River Thames to the River Tees, a territory that was neither entirely English nor purely Scandinavian, where Viking settlers did not merely arrive. They remained, governed, and intermarried, creating a distinct societal fabric. In contrast to the brutal raids of earlier periods, the Danelaw represented the Vikings' deeper aspiration for sustained dominion. Here, they constructed fortified towns known as burhs, serving as centers of governance where Norse authorities enforced Danish law, administered justice, and collected taxes. In towns such as Jorvik, now modern-day York, a blend of Norse and Saxon elements flourished. The legal framework, notable for its system of trial by jury and the concept of vergild, compensation for injury or death, demonstrated a pragmatic fusion of influences. This multicultural experiment, born out of necessity, gradually transformed an otherwise isolated medieval world into a more integrated society. York, or Jorvik as the Vikings called it, emerged as the focal point of the Danelaw. Captured by the great heathen army, led by the sons of Ragnar Lothbrok in 866 AD, Jorvik was transformed from a Roman stronghold into a vibrant Norse capital, a significant commercial hub in northern Europe. Its paved streets were filled with merchants trading goods ranging from amber to walrus ivory. The air was alive with a mixture of Scandinavian, Anglo-Saxon, and Celtic dialects, reflecting the convergence of cultures. The architecture mirrored this fusion. Norse settlers reshaped portions of the city, utilizing wooden constructions reminiscent of their familiar homesteads. Artifacts such as intricately carved combs and brooches, discovered by archaeologists, reveal an industrious society skilled in metallurgy and craftsmanship. Despite Jorvik's bustling activity, echoes of its tumultuous history resonated through Norse sagas and legends shared in longhouses, tales steeped in narratives of gods, heroes, and inescapable fate. Daily life within the Danelaw presented a mosaic of Viking innovation and adapted Anglo-Saxon customs, a vivid depiction of two worlds intertwined. Agriculture dictated the daily rhythms. Fields of barley and wheat coexisted with dense forests, providing timber and game. Viking settlers introduced the heavy plow, revolutionizing the cultivation of England's clay soils into fertile land. The Norse inclination for animal husbandry resulted in the countryside being dotted with sheep and cattle. In Viking homes, longhouses with thatched roofs encompassed communal spaces centered around large hearths, the warm heart of domestic life where stories, meals, and fellowship thrived. Norse religious practices were deeply integrated into everyday existence. Wooden carvings honored their gods, and horse sacrifices were performed to seek divine favor. This spiritual blend of Norse mythology and Saxon Christianity created an intricate tapestry that defined the cultural identity of the Danelaw. The Danelaw also established a distinct legal framework where Norse customs integrated with Anglo-Saxon traditions, blending Scandinavian and Saxon legal structures. Viking governance placed a strong emphasis on personal compensation. Vergild allowed for crimes to be settled through monetary payments. Local assemblies, known as things, served as judicial forums where free men debated and determined outcomes. This represented a form of early democracy, prioritizing consensus over autocratic decrees. Eloquence often held sway, with speakers capable of influencing decisions with their words, echoing saga narratives where wit was as crucial as the sword. Women in the Danelaw carved out significant roles, enjoying freedoms that were less common for their Anglo-Saxon counterparts, a result of their Norse cultural heritage. They possessed the right to own land, inherit property, and negotiate marriages, representing a level of social empowerment less frequently observed in medieval Europe. Celebrated narratives such as that of Ode the Deep-Minded highlight the influential positions held by women. Women were responsible for maintaining familial law, preserving oral traditions, and assuming spiritual roles through female-led rites. Despite the burdens of domestic life and external threats, Norse women shaped enduring identities, merging Norse spirit with new beginnings in a shared land. In the Danelaw, the boundaries between warrior and trader became blurred. Viking incursions served as both raids and commercial missions. As mercenaries, Norse warriors leveraged their military skills to serve local rulers, vying for dominance. Trading networks flourished under Viking expertise, connecting the coast of Canada to the bustling markets of Baghdad. This commercial dynamism transformed towns in the Danelaw into busy marketplaces filled with exotic goods, Frankish wine, Byzantine silks, Baltic amber, items that celebrated Viking reach and diverse tastes. However, the Danelaw remained a contested territory, constantly shifting between Norse and Anglo-Saxon control. Battles such as those at Ashdown and Edington, led by figures like Alfred the Great, aimed to reclaim English lands. Alfred's strategic fortifications effectively countered the rapid Norse raids. Despite defeats and treaties, Norse influence persisted, shaping a melting pot of cultures through a combination of military action and statesmanship, a narrative of power, survival, and identity. As the Viking Age drew to a close, its legacy in England remained deeply embedded. Danelaw shires contributed to the foundations of English governance, incorporating Norse agricultural innovations that spurred population growth and prosperity. Viking words are scattered throughout the English language, and their place names still mark the landscape. It is a story of resilience, where Norse and Anglo-Saxon narratives merged into a robust identity that propelled England forward, a lasting testament to the transformative power of struggle. As dawn broke over the Irish Sea, longships cast dark silhouettes on the Liffey, marking a significant turning point in 841 as Dublin commenced its transformation from a tranquil settlement into a thriving Viking stronghold. Moving beyond mere raids and brief visits, the Norse recognized the potential to establish a city, not merely a defensive position. Combining boldness with entrepreneurial spirit, they laid the groundwork for a lucrative port ideally suited for trade, urban development, and, regrettably, a flourishing slave market that would soon gain notoriety. In these bustling public spaces, the slave market conducted a vigorous trade in human lives, captured during raids across the British Isles. Chains rattled as the voices of buyers and sellers echoed, bartering lives destined for distant lands such as Iceland, or even the markets of the Arab world. This served as a troubling testament to the Norse's pragmatic pursuit of wealth. Dublin presented a stark contrast. Once terrorized by Vikings, it was now invigorated by commerce, teeming with shrewd traders and lives rich in narrative. Yet beneath the surface of this harsh enterprise lay a diverse Norse society. Warriors sharpened their blades, merchants weighed goods, while skalds composed epic tales by the flickering light of hearth fires. Norse customs intertwined with Gaelic culture in unexpected ways, where echoes of Odin and Thor blended with Irish legends, reflecting both a cultural merging and a shared understanding of survival. Public offerings at ancient sites honored both Norse and Celtic deities, their myths forming a shared heritage. Nevertheless, Norse Dublin was far from a harmonious environment. The Irish, known for their resilience and independent spirit, viewed these newcomers with a mixture of hostility and opportunity. Chieftains confronted the Norse with fierce determination and strategic alliances, sometimes aligning with Viking lords against common adversaries. Thus, Dublin's history was marked by both betrayal and allegiance, forging a saga of bravery and cunning amidst its hills and valleys. Emerging as the Venice of the North, Dublin's reputation as a trade center grew. Its docks and market stalls were laden with silver coins, sheepskins, and the aroma of exotic spices brought by traders from diverse lands. The Vikings' mastery of the sea mirrored their commercial acumen, transforming Dublin into a vibrant nexus within a complex network of European trade routes. It was not solely a place of conflict and skirmishes, but also of cultural exchange and opportunity, solidifying its place in medieval trade law. At the helm of this flourishing enclave stood Viking rulers like Ivar and Olaf, combining regal ambition with seafaring tenacity. They established dynasties, ruling with strategic cunning and formidable strength. Their stories are marked by conflicts within their kin groups and alliances, balancing brutality with statesmanship to shape Dublin's destiny over generations. And yet time brought change. Law in Norse Dublin was both practical and harsh, administered through assemblies known as things. Justice involved a mix of negotiation and the potential for violence, resulting in judgments that reminded everyone that honor was often more valuable than life itself. Blood feuds erupted from minor insults, while severe punishments loomed over the city like a chilling specter, reinforcing a rigid social hierarchy governed by fear and respect. In this dynamic environment, spiritual tensions arose as the Norse encountered the growing influence of Christianity. Pagan rites continued to be practiced in Dublin. However, the impact of Christian doctrine steadily increased. Monastic scribes documented this spiritual conflict, capturing not just a clash of beliefs, but Dublin's broader struggle for identity. Here, pagans and Christians debated the fate of their souls, leaving a lasting imprint on the fabric of Dublin. The mid-11th century saw a gradual decline in Norse power. Complex political dynamics, the evolving influence of Christianity, and the notable Battle of Clontarf in 1014 marked the decline of Norse rule. While not a decisive defeat, the battle symbolized the weakening Norse influence as shifts towards integration and change occurred. The Vikings began to transition from raiders to settlers, their impact interwoven with the city's narrative as the siege by Irish forces heralded a new era. Yet the legacy of those seafaring men persists in the spirit of Dublin. Norse systems of trade, currency, and maritime skill left an enduring mark on Ireland's economy. Place names, sagas, and silent echoes resonate through the streets, ensuring that the memory of those storm-tossed adventurers endures. Reflecting this rich tapestry, Dublin evolved from a stronghold of Norse conquest to a symbol of cultural fusion, acknowledging and respecting its past. Dublin thus stands today as a monument to transformation, a city where tales of raiders evolved into stories of coexistence. Modern celebrations of Viking heritage, set against a backdrop of ancient echoes, pay tribute to those who once shaped this enduring landscape. As history unfolded in this Norse enclave, Dublin's historical tapestry continues to weave vitality and myths from those distant days at sea. In 911, amidst the swirling chaos left by relentless Norse incursions, French King Charles the Simple created a scenario of unexpected alliance. Hoping to protect his kingdom from further Viking attacks, he extended a diplomatic overture to Rollo, a notorious Viking warlord. Instead of engaging in armed conflict, they communicated through words, culminating in the Treaty of St. Clair-sur-Epte. This agreement, characterized by irony and shrewdness, granted Rollo land in exchange for his allegiance. Thus, Normandy was born, a region where Norse warriors began their transformation from feared raiders into French-speaking nobles, forever inscribing their presence in the annals of European history. Rollo, subsequently known as Robert, brought with him the promising energy of Norse culture. He demonstrated a skill for political maneuvering, evident in the slightly awkward moment when he instructed one of his men to kiss King Charles's foot, an incident that blended humor with diplomatic tension. This settlement saw Norsemen adopting the local customs and intricate social structures of the Gallo-Roman world, forging an identity that was a blend of Viking and Frankish elements. The transition was not merely a superficial change of allegiances, but a profound cultural merging. As villages along the Seine grew into towns, Norse runes appeared alongside Christian crosses in a process where the Norse gradually embraced Christianity, driven more by political pragmatism than a spiritual awakening. This fusion of beliefs was reflected in the very structure of society. Marriages between Norsemen and Frankish women resulted in a growing lineage that introduced new bloodlines into Europe's noble families. Language also evolved, with the sounds of Old Norse merging with the smoother flow of Romance languages to form Norman French. This dialect became a living testament to their integration and adaptability. Legal proceedings that involved Viking combat coexisted with the more structured Frankish legal framework, creating a society that represented a fusion of Viking bravery and Frankish order. As Normandy matured, it mirrored the feudal system prevalent across Europe, a structure well-suited to the strategic minds of Viking chiefs who had become landowners. The social hierarchy was built on a foundation of loyalty, land ownership, and military skill, with Rollo leading the way by distributing land to his most trusted followers in exchange for military support. What emerged was a dynamic feudal system that supplemented their tribal origins with the complexities of feudal codes, providing a template for power that could navigate the turbulent waters of medieval politics. With the development of their territory came the monumental construction using stone. The wooden buildings of their seafaring past were replaced by grand castles and imposing cathedrals. These structures were more than just stone and wood. They were symbols of dominance, formidable protectors of their realm. Normandy's castles, fortified with motte and bailey designs, stood strong against both time and invaders. Meanwhile, Gothic-style churches, architectural expressions, blending spirituality with artistic skill, rose towards the heavens, reflecting the Normans' commitment to both religious faith and governance. Norman strength was not confined to their homeland's borders. Through kinship and marriage, their influence spread through Europe's political landscape, expanding through unions with powerful families. The Normans excelled not only as warriors but also as statesmen. This influence intensified through astute political strategies, as seen in the marital alliances orchestrated by Richard I, Rollo's great-grandson. They secured alliances that had far-reaching consequences beyond Normandy, extending through the royal courts of Christendom and projecting political influence into the heart of England. This set the stage for William, later known as the Conqueror, whose claim to the English throne was as much based on lineage as it was on Normandy's increasing power. Connections forged during the reign of King Edward the Confessor, where Norman allegiances found fertile ground in England, laid the foundation for one of history's significant events, the Norman conquest of England. With the Battle of Hastings in 1066, William's forces not only seized a kingdom, but introduced an era that intertwined Norman strategic thinking with English rule, transforming the land and echoing the Norse legacy of ambition. The administrative expertise that followed demonstrated the Normans' keen understanding of governance. The creation of the Domesday Book, a comprehensive survey of the land, exemplified their unparalleled record-keeping and control. Through the precision of these records, their influence solidified within English governance, demonstrating respect for both Viking autonomy and French order, as seen in their balanced legal systems. Over time, the echoes of their Norse origins faded within the opulent settings of French courtly life. As the Normans adopted court etiquette and cultivated the arts, their seamless transition from Norse outsiders to integrated members of society in France and England marked their era as one defined by sophisticated practicality. The cultural legacy they left behind was profound, with structures and institutions that would shape the development of medieval Europe long after their initial conquest. Ultimately, Norman ambition extended beyond the confines of the continent. Their adventurous spirit led to conquests in Sicily and southern Italy, extending their influence southward and establishing Norman governance over the Mediterranean. These exploits symbolize their enduring presence in the world, illustrating how Viking enterprise transcended its Scandinavian origins to become a key force in shaping medieval history. Normandy's story within this historical chapter is one of transformation, a saga where Viking heritage shaped and reshaped entire kingdoms, leaving an indelible mark on the world. The narrative of how the Normans, descendants of the Vikings, came to establish a sphere of influence in Sicily is a tale woven with cunning and resilience. Imagine the early 11th century, a region composed of a patchwork of Lombard principalities, Byzantine territories, and Arab emirates. Into this diverse environment stepped the Normans, a reflection of their Viking ancestors, yet transformed through generations of Frankish heritage. They ventured south not with the reckless raids of their seafaring forefathers, but through negotiation and alliances. With swords sheathed and minds sharp, they were led by brothers Robert Guiscard and Roger the Further. Serving initially as mercenaries and later becoming rulers, the Normans navigated the turbulent currents of Italian politics, employing diplomacy with the same skill as they wielded their swords. Their conquest of Sicily began with the capture of Messina, followed by a strategic game of sieges and maneuvers rather than swift plundering. Roger the Furry, a strategist as well as a warrior, laid siege to cities, his forces moving through the island's rugged interior like whispers on the wind, securing Arab and Lombard allies through promises rather than threats. The capture of Palermo in 1072 was Roger's decisive victory. This Islamic port was not merely a valuable acquisition, it was the heart of Sicilian trade and political power. His triumph was not solely military. It combined the intrigue of alliances with diplomatic skill, laying the groundwork for a vibrant court that would flourish with multicultural elements. Greek, Arab, and Latin traditions merged and thrived under Norman rule, creating a rich tapestry of customs and architecture, as varied as the sense filling Palermo's bustling markets. The palace established by Roger became a symbol of tolerance, its walls adorned with Byzantine mosaics and Arabesque patterns, harmonizing with Romanesque solidity. The Palatine Chapel stands as a testament to this architectural synthesis, with ceilings painted in the lavish style of Arabia and mosaics narrating stories in gleaming detail, a visual representation of the harmonious blend of cultures within the island's shores. Roger II, the first king of Sicily, and his successors were more than just rulers. They were cultivators of cultures, fostering a realm where interfaith dialogue flourished in a climate of religious pluralism rarely seen in medieval Europe. Mosques, Orthodox churches, and Catholic cathedrals coexisted, a symphony of differing beliefs under the pragmatic oversight of Norman rulers who perceived diversity as an asset rather than a threat. As the aroma of foreign spices mingled with local scents in Palermo, scholars and artists found fertile ground in the Norman courts. Under the patronage of Roger II and his grandson Frederick II, the intellectual court buzzed with the exchange of ideas as dynamic as the markets. Works of Greek philosophy, Islamic advancements, and Christian theologies were translated and valued, propelling Sicily into an intellectual renaissance. These halls echoed with the brilliance of mathematicians, geographers, and poets, their insights contributing to the court's lasting legacy, outlasting the physical structures that housed them. The Normans' mastery extended beyond land and military might. It encompassed hearts and minds, an understanding of the strength found in diverse populations coexisting under a single rule. Tales of their reign speak of cultural synergy, where Arab administrators maintained order, and poets composed verses that felt like warm honey, as if whispering stories of Sicilian nights where the stars were reflected in the calm sea below. However, the decline of Norman Sicily arrived with a whisper rather than a roar. External pressures and internal disagreements set the stage for its decline as the 12th century drew to a close. Sicilian power dynamics shifted like sand, independence gradually slipping away with the rising tide of the Hohenstaufen dynasty. Despite these political changes, the echoes of their rule lingered in stone and story, a reminder of a golden age where collaboration prevailed over conquest in historical accounts. Even as the Norman banner was lowered over Sicily, the spirit of their rule persisted, an intellectual and architectural imprint left on the land. Their legacy is etched in tales of cultural blending, a subtle lesson contrasting with the loud clamor of war, an enduring testament that challenges the often simplistic narratives of medieval governance. In an era where historical accounts often feel as distant as they are dusty, the saga of the Norse kings in Sicily lingers like the scent of a hearth, a symbol of possibility that illuminated the modern world, whispering from the shadows to remind us of the power found when cultures connect. In the vast wooded territories of Eastern Europe, the Norsemen sought wealth and dominion. Known in these lands as the Rus, they navigated the rivers like serpents, their sturdy longships cutting through the waters of the Dnieper and Volga. These waterways connected the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, making them vital arteries of a growing trade network. The Rus were not only raiders but also shrewd traders, exchanging furs and slaves for silks, spices, and other goods with empires and lands far beyond their northern origins. Their journey was not merely one of exploration, it laid the foundation for a cultural transformation that merged Norse cunning with Slavic resilience. The region that would develop into Kievan Rus originated as a modest Norse outpost, a complex mix of alliances and skirmishes with the Slavic tribes. Over time, the Norse influence deepened, their language blending with local dialects, their gods sharing the spiritual stage with Slavic deities. A new entity emerged, where Viking boldness intertwined with the developing Slavic narrative, setting the stage for something much grander. It was within this swirling blend of conquest and shrewdness that Kiev rose from a trading post to a center of power. According to historical accounts and chronicles, it was Oleg of Novgorod who recognized Kiev's potential. In 882 AD, he seized the city, proclaiming it the mother of Rus' cities. With this act, he firmly established Norse influence in the Slavic world, transforming the trading outpost into the heart of a burgeoning empire. Kiev flourished as a bustling commercial hub, attracting merchants from Scandinavia, Byzantium, and the steppes of Central Asia. The energy of its markets, alive with the sounds of trade negotiations and bartering, reflected its newfound prominence. Norse settlers mingled with Slavic locals, interweaving their traditions and governance, ultimately giving rise to the rich societal fabric of Kievan Rus. This blend of Viking individuality and Slavic communal practices created a robust social infrastructure, enriching the region's political and cultural life. Indeed, the Norse influence extended beyond mere commerce and conquest. They established a system of governance rooted in adaptability and strength. Led by chieftains such as Rurik and his descendants, the Varangian rulers integrated Norse military practices with Slavic communal traditions, creating an administration that embraced both authority and pragmatism. They formed strategic alliances, understanding the strength derived from unifying diverse socio-political landscapes. This combination of tradition and innovation was evident in the codified laws that ensured loyalty and stability across varied populations. Culturally, Kievan Rus was a beacon of synthesis. Art and craftsmanship thrived, blending Norse and Slavic aesthetics in weapons, jewelry, and architecture. Language, too, was a crucible of creativity, as Old Norse interacted with Old East Slavic, forging a linguistic tapestry rich with mythology and song. Markets and meeting places were vibrant with the shared narratives of these intertwined cultures, where traded stories held as much value as the commodities exchanged. The Norse introduced their gods of thunder and wisdom. However, the religious landscape shifted with the arrival of Christianity from Byzantium. Under Prince Vladimir in 988 AD, the Great Baptism oriented Kiev's spiritual direction towards Eastern Orthodoxy, aligning it with the Byzantine world. Yet even amidst this change, older beliefs persisted, echoing through villages where pagan customs refused to entirely disappear. A unique religious tapestry emerged, one where Orthodox rituals carried the echoes of ancient songs, a testament to the region's ability to integrate the old with the new. Kiev's influence spread across Europe, driven by its extensive trade networks. It served as a bustling artery connecting the cold north with the opulent south, a point of convergence for goods, ideas, and innovations. Byzantine influence brought changes in governance and architecture, with golden-domed churches rising on Kiev's skyline, reflecting the grandeur of Constantinople. These exchanges enriched Kievan society, enabling it to wield influence far beyond its borders. However, the fabric of Kievan unity frayed under the weight of internal conflict. Dynastic disputes among Rurik's descendants sowed discord as the grand narrative became entangled with personal ambitions. Fragmented principalities emerged amidst these familial feuds, each asserting claims over territories once united by Norse influence and Slavic bonds. Yet through these struggles, the region learned the arts of diplomacy and survival, navigating the constantly shifting sands of power with the cunning inherited from their Norse predecessors. Despite these challenges, the legacy of Kievan Rus' endured, even as Mongol forces swept across the plains in the 13th century. In 1240, Kiev fell, its greatness dimmed by the devastation wrought by Batu Khan's hordes. The city lay fractured, yet its influence resonated throughout Eastern Europe. The seeds it had sown through law, culture, and belief continued to sprout, shaping the futures of both Russia and Ukraine. Their history is a vivid tapestry of resilience, woven from the threads of Norse ambition and Slavic endurance, a testament to a past that whispers through time. This narrative, like threads spun by an experienced storyteller by the fire, comes to a close. As the echoes of longships fade, understand that this story is but a single thread in the vast tapestry of history. If this compelling tale has captured your imagination, your appreciation is always welcome. For more stories from history's more rugged side, join us again at Medieval Grime. We promise to serve history seasoned, preserved, and with a touch of playful charm. Stay grimy, and we'll see you next time by the fire. In a period when the lands of Europe were agitated by the ambitions of kings, the Norse people sought a sanctuary untouched by conflict. They yearned to escape the entanglements of monarchical authority, to forge a destiny beyond the shadow of royal power. Iceland, a rugged and uninhabited island spoken of in explorers' tales, promised this opportunity. Despite the perilous voyage, marked by icy waters and whispered superstitions of supernatural dangers, the Norse persevered, driven by more than just a desire to escape. This journey, intertwined with the stories of explorers like Floki Vilgerdarson, who followed ravens to new lands, was as much about seeking freedom as it was about creating a society that reflected Norse ideals. Upon their arrival, the settlers turned their attention to establishing one of the world's oldest legislative bodies, the Althing. In 930 AD, under open skies that revealed both the immensity and harshness of their new home, they convened chieftains and free farmers. Here, decisions were reached through communal agreement, a significant departure from the decrees of distant thrones. This assembly served not only as a legislative body, but also as a social arena where sagas and legal matters intertwined within the collective harmony of oral tradition. Disputes were resolved and laws were proclaimed, all guided by the principles outlined in the Gragas, a legal code that prioritized arbitration over conquest, aiming to restore balance rather than merely inflict punishment. Life in Iceland was a test of human endurance against a backdrop of dramatic landscapes shaped by volcanic and glacial forces. Amidst these towering geysers and expansive ice fields, survival depended on adaptation. Settlers developed a deep connection with the sea, relying on its resources for sustenance and trade, while livestock management became essential for surviving the harsh winters. Nature itself provided warmth through geothermal activity, facilitating rudimentary agriculture in this otherwise cold environment. The shared hardships of the settlers fostered a strong sense of mutual reliance, binding the community together against overwhelming odds. Storytelling became both a cultural cornerstone and a historical record during the long Icelandic winters. Through sagas, the exploits and dreams of Norse settlers were preserved in vibrant oral traditions, offering warmth and moral guidance to lives lived on the edge. Around hearthfires, tales of gods, heroes, and the inescapable shadow of fate transformed listeners into guardians of cultural memory. Icelandic sagas, narratives of adventure, revenge, love, and the supernatural, brought communities together through shared stories and resilience, their vitality surviving in collective memory as vividly as the auroras illuminating Iceland's night sky. However, isolation presented a double-edged sword, granting autonomy at the cost of vulnerability. Iceland's settlers enjoyed freedom from conflicts on the continent, but faced their own internal dynamics and resource limitations. Reliance on risky sea voyages for essential supplies necessitated innovation and resourcefulness. Yet it also gave rise to fierce clan rivalries and bitter feuds. Despite these tensions, the island's inhabitants maintained their social fabric, learning from disputes that were deeply woven into the realm of saga and story, becoming lessons in ambition and unity. Change was imminent with the arrival of Christianity, which loomed like a storm on the horizon amidst pagan rites honoring Odin and Thor. Unlike elsewhere, Iceland's conversion was peaceful. A decision by the Althing integrated the new faith with old practices, ensuring harmony. This pragmatic embrace of Christianity while respecting pagan roots embodied the island's spirit of unity over division. Churches appeared amidst rocks and standing stones, rooted firmly in lands where ancient myths had held sway. This duality created a blended spiritual landscape where both deities and mortals found a place in their cultural ethos, influencing both law and narrative. In matters of law, the Icelanders demonstrated a remarkable commitment to governance, codifying their lives into a system known as the Grægos, Grey Goose laws. Unlike other regions where laws were often overshadowed by monarchs, these laws celebrated dialogue and mutual respect. Central to the Grægos was the preservation of social order, with punishments designed to be precise and focused on restoring balance rather than solely acting as a deterrent. Iceland's identity as a republic emerged from these gatherings at the Althing, a testament to a society that valued collaborative governance rooted in accountability, as open and expansive as the landscape itself. Nevertheless, the island was not immune to the volatile dynamics of clan rivalries and vendettas, where honor and perceived slights ignited fierce feuds. Here, narratives were rich, fueling the saga tradition with compelling stories of bravery and folly. These disputes, despite their chaos, gave birth to powerful stories that defined a shared identity and instilled resilience, even amidst occasional bloodshed. In time, as the first millennium gave way to the second, Iceland stood at the cusp of prosperity. As the 11th century unfolded, economic and cultural growth blossomed, marked by advancements in seafaring and ironwork, transforming isolation into enriching contact with the wider world. This prosperity was a testament not only to past resilience, but also to the promise of challenges yet to come. Deeply rooted in tradition, Iceland's narrative unfolded under its vibrant skies, a uniquely Norse saga of resilience and community amidst Europe's changing tides. Eric the Red, with his striking red hair and equally intense personality, was no ordinary Norseman. Born around 950 AD in Norway, his family's relocation to the icy expanses of Iceland was a consequence of necessity. They were exiled. In a turn of events mirroring his father's journey, Eric himself faced banishment from Iceland due to his unruly behavior. Yet where others saw exile, Eric perceived an opportunity. Driven by accounts of unexplored lands, he navigated the harsh North Atlantic to discover a distant icy territory. He named this place Greenland, a promotional tactic as refreshing as it was deceptive, intended to evoke images of fertile pastures. Marketing an inhospitable land based on its name was a considerable feat. Nevertheless, Eric succeeded in attracting settlers to these remote shores, establishing the foundations for one of the most distant Norse outposts. Enter Leif Erikson, Eric's son, who embarked on his own ambitious journey in the early 11th century. Fueled by a spirit of adventure and having heard tales from sailors about lands beyond Greenland, Leif set sail towards what would become known as Vinland. Sailing into the unknown, he eventually reached the shores of a region that offered abundant resources and temperate climates, likely the area we recognize today as Newfoundland. A place of promise, Vinland boasted fertile lands, a stark contrast to the often harsh landscapes of Greenland. Yet the hopes sparked by these discoveries were not without their challenges, as settlers would soon discover the difficulties this new world presented. Greenland, enticingly named but brutally cold, was neither forgiving nor welcoming to its Norse settlers. Facing relentless winds and barren plains, survival was a constant struggle. They established two main colonies, the eastern settlement near present-day Qaqortoq and the western settlement further north. These communities carved out an existence, coaxing growth from the unforgiving soil and raising livestock to endure the freezing climate. Each day was a test of ingenuity and resilience, played out against a backdrop of icebound fjords. Greenland's lifeline was trade, primarily in walrus tusks, highly valued across Europe for intricate carvings. In return, they received iron, tools, timber, and other essentials scarce in their polar environment. But this fragile balance wavered as the climate cooled and contact with Europe diminished. The saga of Vinland speaks of a land so verdant it was named for its wild grapes. Here was paradise until encounters with indigenous peoples, labeled Skrælings, revealed a more complex reality. These initial interactions began with trade, but escalated into suspicion and conflict. The Skrælings, skilled in defending the terrain the Norse found so promising. Their guerrilla tactics clashed with Norse strategies, and with neither peace nor sustainable trade, the Vinland settlements proved temporary. Unlike the less populated settlements they were accustomed to, Vinland's inhabitants were numerous and skilled, challenging Norse aspirations of expansion. Thus, the Norse abandoned Vinland as quickly as they had arrived. Persistent conflict and logistical difficulties, combined with waning European interest, rendered the maintenance of such an outpost impractical. The perilous journey from Greenland, the unpredictable climate, and morale diminished by isolation, led explorers to return home. Vinland faded into legend, the Norse Atlantis, a fleeting colony etched into the tales of time. Although their presence was brief, the Norse left traces of their past on North American soil. Lonso Meadows, discovered in 1960, provides evidence of these Viking visits, revealing the remains of dwellings and workshops distinctly Norse in character. This isolated site, alongside indigenous lore and metal artifacts hinting at Norse origin, enriches the narrative of pre-Columbian contact, suggesting interwoven stories and encounters far richer than saga alone reveals. The Norse eventually faced their own decline in Greenland, their fate mirroring the end of the medieval warm period. The Little Ice Age brought longer winters and shorter summers, reducing the limited agricultural output. The Norse's pastoral and hunting lifestyle became unsustainable. As Greenland grew colder, choking trade routes and weakening their precarious hold on survival, their reluctance to adopt Inuit methods better suited to the climate led them down a path towards abandonment. Commerce, an increasingly fragile link, connected Greenland to Europe. Trade in valuable walrus tusks and exotic goods was a precarious thread, threatened by Europe's shifting priorities and internal feudal conflicts. As Europe's focus realigned, torn between crusades and continental strife, Greenland's importance diminished, severing ties that had sustained the Norse in these remote territories. Spiritual life in Greenland also reflected a transformation as Christianity reached even this distant frontier. Before embracing the cross, Norse settlers adhered to gods like Thor and Odin. However, as ecclesiastical structures took root, the old belief systems intertwined with newer Christian practices, evolving yet remaining resilient. The ruins of churches bear witness to this blending, a tapestry of faith combining Norse roots with imported ecclesial authority. Yet in remote isolation, old sagas and myths resisted disappearing, coexisting with new creeds in the gritty reality of their lives. Ultimately, the Norse story in Greenland faded into obscurity by the 15th century. Malnutrition and disease worsened by severe climatic conditions, and the collapse of trade left the settlements vulnerable. As some Norse returned to Iceland or integrated with Inuit communities, their cultural presence waned. Nevertheless, their legacy endures, filled with echoes of endurance, exploration, and cultural blending, painting a picture at the precarious edge of civilization, where Viking daring met its coldest adversary. By the time the 11th century arrived, the Viking Age, once a prominent era of seafaring raids and kingdom building, began to witness its vibrant colors diminish. The tide of Norse dominance, once feared across Europe, was receding. As European kingdoms consolidated power, the atmosphere that had once pulsed with apprehension at the sight of Viking longships grew eerily quiet. Emerging centralized states such as England and France, with their stone fortifications and standing armies, presented formidable obstacles to the independent Viking chieftains. The strategies that had previously carved out realms now appeared starkly inadequate against an ever-changing political landscape. It was a gradual, uncertain decline, not a sudden catastrophe, but a series of incremental changes. The climate also played a role. The mini ice age distorted growing seasons and added a challenging layer of difficulty to Norse agricultural endeavors. Contrast this with the increasing strength and diminished vulnerability of European towns' defenses, and the decline of Viking raids seemed inevitable. The Viking kingdoms, spread widely and thinly, found their reach curtailed and their future clouded in uncertainty. As the Christian faith spread throughout the Viking realms, a profound transformation took place. By converting, whether through persuasion or force, Norse leaders began to adopt a new moral code that conflicted with their long-held traditions. The Viking ethos of plundering was supplanted by one of peace and negotiation, drawing Viking society closer to the heart of European Christendom. Sacred Norse rituals slowly gave way as Christian sacraments took hold, with wooden temples replaced by stone monasteries. For the younger generations, tales of Odin and Thor became echoes from a past that was gradually fading into obscurity. These new beliefs wove Viking territories more deeply into the European tapestry, guiding their rugged independence toward the more settled paths of diplomatic and trade relations. Politics also underwent a shift. Previously independent and somewhat untamed Viking regions began to merge into the larger political structures of European nations. In England, the Danelaw gradually dissolved under the relentless pressure of Anglo-Saxon expansion, eventually integrating into a unified English rule. In Normandy, Norse leaders assimilated into French customs, facilitating smooth transfers of control. The strong Norse hold on these lands diminished, absorbed into the substantial embrace of emerging European monarchies. As power became centralized, Viking nobility found themselves entangled in the feudal systems that curbed their once audacious autonomy. Great Norse centers waned into mere provinces, their fierce independence buried beneath layers of medieval political maneuvering. Yet amidst this loss, the seeds for new growth emerged, enriching Europe's cultural tapestry with Norse bloodlines. Economically, the Viking transition was pronounced. Raids and tributes, the main sources of Viking prosperity, declined as treaties with rising powers thwarted their opportunistic ventures. Following the reduction in raids, trade and agriculture forged new paths. However, the landscape was rugged and sparse, chilled by a changing climate and characterized by competitive European markets. Norse trade routes persisted on the fringes, while once fertile lands were impacted by untimely frosts. Language and tradition, essential components of Norse identity, began to weaken. Old Norse struggled amidst the variety of emerging European languages, and with it, the stories conveyed in sagas and runes. Language gradually gave way to the Latin script, a subtle yet significant transformation that reflected the shifting tides. While adaptability allowed the Norse to find a place within this vast European expanse, the vibrant authenticity of their ancestral ways receded, enveloped in layers of assimilation. Despite their decline, the legend of the Vikings grew. Their sagas captured imaginations, the spirit of exploration immortalized through songs, stories, and contemporary interpretations. Romanticized images of fierce raiders and navigators resonated in literature, film, and modern culture, ensuring their name endures long after their political power waned. Even as distinct Viking entities faded, their bloodlines subtly intertwined with the noble roots of European monarchies. Norse descendants intermarried with various aristocratic families, injecting their heritage and ideas into the fabric of European governance. The Normans, Vikings who had claimed French lands, reshaped medieval England with governance practices marked by that ancient Norse resilience. This unexpected blending of systems ensured that the Viking influence extended far beyond turbulent seas and battle-scarred lands, suggesting that their end was a transformation, not a final conclusion. Maritime achievements remain a prominent feature of their legacy. Unparalleled in their shipbuilding and navigational skills, the Vikings crafted swift, agile longships that charted courses extending far east into Russia and west to Newfoundland. Their innovations in seafaring became an inspiration for future explorers, defining the limits and scope of medieval exploration. While Christianity swept through their lands, pagan echoes lingered. Traditions such as Yule's winter solstice subtly evolved into Christmas rituals, blending Norse mythology deeply into the heart of European festivities. Norse mythology left a lasting mark on European folklore, a testament to the enduring power of ancient beliefs threading through the European consciousness. Even today, Viking heritage resonates strongly within Scandinavian identity, proudly cherished in art, literature, and collective memory. Festivals celebrate the combination of historical boldness and contemporary spirit, attracting global participation. These cultural threads not only immortalize Viking achievements, but also ground the past in a vibrant present, echoing through generations with tales spun from history's shadow. As longships pierced the northern mists, they carried not only warriors but also the seeds of kingdoms. The Vikings, initially known as fierce raiders, gradually transformed from plunderers into rulers, establishing roots that reshaped Europe's landscape. Their initial desire for plunder evolved into a hunger for power and land as they integrated themselves into the fabric of European civilization. This metamorphosis was neither sudden nor simple. It demanded skilled diplomacy, calculated military strategies, and an openness to cultural exchange. More cunning than mere conquerors, Viking leaders such as Guthrum and Ivar the Boneless rose to prominence by building societies that seamlessly merged Norse and local traditions. This duality defines their legacy, blending military might with the adaptability that allowed their influence to persist even as the Viking Age declined. Their cities, architectural marvels in their own right, began to thrive far beyond basic settlements. Places like York, Dublin, and Normandy became dynamic urban centers, strategically positioned near waterways for both trade and defense. Legendary figures like Rollo fortified these towns, influencing European architectural styles for generations. Even as these cities combined Norse and local cultures, their physical structures began to incorporate Norse artistic patterns and motifs, a testament to the Vikings' engineering skill and strategic planning. Their legacy, evident in enduring cities and innovative designs, reveals a sophisticated understanding of urban development, cementing their place in the narrative of European transformation. The intricate network of Viking influence also extended into royal lineages across Europe through strategic marriages and alliances. Viking bloodlines intertwined with European nobility. The Dukes of Normandy, descendants of Rollo, played pivotal roles, culminating in William the Conqueror's Norman invasion of England. This was more than just conquest. It was a fusion of governance and culture that profoundly altered English society. These dynastic maneuvers reflected the Vikings' foresight and adaptability, securing their influence and perpetuating their legacy at the highest levels of power. Alongside their political actions, the cultural influence of the Vikings left an enduring mark on European mythology and literature. Norse mythology, with its vivid pantheon and cosmology, captivated the medieval imagination. Tales of Odin, Thor, and Loki permeated European folklore, transcending their Scandinavian origins. As Viking sagas circulated, they influenced medieval literature with themes of valor, betrayal, and fate, highlighting shared human experiences. Even today, our language contains echoes of Norse words, while their artistic styles continue to inspire manuscripts and artifacts, embodying their widespread cultural impact. The Vikings were also master traders, with commercial networks spanning from the Middle East to North America. Longships laden with goods traversed these routes, facilitating exchanges that enriched Viking economies and deepened their integration into the medieval world. Through trade, they disseminated culture and technology, demonstrating their identity as not just warriors, but also astute merchants. The economic interdependence established along these routes outlasted their military presence, underscoring their complex nature. Conversion marked another transformative chapter in the Viking legacy. As leaders like Olaf Tryggvason and Harald Bluetooth embraced Christianity, they utilized it as a tool to unite Norse territories with the rest of Christian Europe. Conversion was a complex process and resulted in syncretic rituals, blending Norse traditions with Christian rites. This cultural duality left lasting imprints on medieval Christendom, preserving Viking traditions even as they adopted a new religious era. The Viking legacy is also evident through their extraordinary artistic achievements. Their work in wood, metal, and textiles revealed a distinctive aesthetic that combined form with function, mysticism with practicality. This art, adorned with intricate knotwork and mythological motifs, embellished everything from jewelry to household items. As they settled, Viking artisans absorbed local styles, contributing to a vibrant art movement. The influence of their artistic legacy continues to resonate today in Scandinavian design, inspiring modern creativity. Furthermore, the spirit of Viking exploration reshaped the European worldview. Their voyages, driven by curiosity, took them from the icy shores of Greenland to the forests of Vinland, mapping new territories and expanding the known world. Although their settlements in North America were temporary, these ventures demonstrated a pioneering spirit that later European explorers emulated. This legacy of exploration still resonates, a haunting reminder of human tenacity in the face of the unknown. Though the Viking Age concluded by the 11th century, the essence of Norse identity persisted. Their decline resulted from various factors, including territorial consolidation and Christianization, which altered the contours of Viking power. Yet rather than fading, Norse culture experienced a resurgence, transforming into diverse, regionally specific forms. This ensured that their cultural traditions thrived within new societal structures, particularly evident in Iceland's sagas and Norway's folklore. This renaissance within decline highlights the paradoxical strength of the Viking legacy, a continuous evolution, always leaving a profound imprint on European identity. Today, the Viking saga is woven into our cultural consciousness, continuously captivating and educating audiences worldwide. Their indomitable ships and resilient warriors live on in literature, film, and media, transforming their history into a cultural phenomenon. As museums preserve their treasures and stories, the Viking legacy endures, haunting and inspiring future generations, securing a lasting place in the epic of human history.